Greetings and salutations to you all. This is DeeDee Moon Flyer. Welcome to Twilight, Tonic, your weekly voyage to points distant and parts unknown. We'll discuss all things paranormal, spiritual, weird, and wonderful. So if you're ready, grab your favorite tonic, your best comfy chair, and let's begin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Twilight Tonic, and happy Memorial Day. But first, I would like to thank anyone who has served in the U.S. military, men, women, and service animals. Thank you for your service, and those that have passed, thank you for your service. We honor you with gratitude. Well, I'm sorry I'm a day late, everyone, but I was at an amazing camp. I was doing a mediumship weekend full of wonderful classes at Camp Chesterfield, Indiana. You should check them out. They have some wonderful, wonderful spiritual classes. And they also have a little hotel you can stay at that is a step back in time. It is truly a step back in time. But it's a great time, and it's a wonderful place to do some spiritual work. So Camp Chesterfield, check them out. And it is in Indiana. And tonight, I have a wonderful guest, a fellow podcaster, and anyone that knows me, I love fellow podcaster and YouTube interviewers. You know, they kind of open our world and let us see what's going on. And tonight, I have Michael Kopf. And he is a paranormal investigator who had his first experience at 2. You know, and that kind of drives you going. And it caused him to do research and to go overseas where he had a lot of super cool experiences. And in 2023, his own show aired, Rebel.com. And on January 2024, he launched Riding Through the Unknown on eTalk Radio, along with short videos titled Insights into the Mind of Michael Kopf. How are you tonight, Michael?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's wonderful having you on, another podcaster and YouTuber. So, Michael, what in the world got you involved in the paranormal world and metaphysical world?
So, interesting story about that is I grew up in metaphysics and had all these spiritual experiences growing up and was introduced to a lot of things. And about 6-7 years ago, I started watching paranormal shows on TV and was really interested in that. And then I was on a conference meeting and I get a message on my Facebook that says, "Hey, would you like to paranormal investigate with us?" And my response was, "You mean this is real? People actually do this? It's not just TV?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And so I went and gave it a try, and I got hooked. And as I was learning and researching all the paranormal phenomena, I realized a lot of the what I called metaphysical experiences growing up could also be classified as paranormal. And so I felt like I was raised in it.
Now, was your mom really into it and your father, or which?
My mom and dad were raised through what we call mainstream religion.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, being Lutheran based, always felt like you ought to have a choice in your beliefs. And my dad was Catholic, and he came along after her. They kind of took a little bit, but by the time I came around, they were pretty much figured out, yeah, we're going to allow us to figure out ourselves what we want to believe. And so a teaser for and transparency for your audience is when we were talking before we were recording, I said I had a funny story about religion.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like this is the moment to share that is when I was in church at a Catholic church, we would be sitting there and I would be talking with my mom or my sisters or my dad, and I would sing the songs. And when the priest got up to give his sermon, I would fall asleep.
Oh.
And the second he was done, I would wake back up.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened every Sunday. So we kind of decided, let's not go to church all the time because, something's off. Because we couldn't figure out why I was always falling asleep during that one specific part. So fast forward years later, my mom became a medium and we were doing a kind of, I guess you could call it circle where people were all there and could ask
Mm-hmm.
questions or their spirit guides. And I said, what happened to me as a kid in church? I've always wondered that. And they said,
Right.
we didn't to learn the dogma. So we knocked you out, put you to sleep, so you would not get the dogma.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so I could say I've attended church, but I have zero dogma attachment. And it's like, there's some freedom to that, but it
Mm-hmm.
also makes it a little bit harder to relate to people who grew up with the dogma because to me it's really easy to say, yeah, I can let that go and I can believe this or that. And I had to remember when I'm talking to other people, they have to unlearn that
Yeah.
to be open to what's coming. And it's like I had to remember to have some patience for the unlearning factor.
Yeah. That's very true, isn't it?
And yeah, and it's I get caught up sometimes because I'll be like, well, this can be explained by this and this and this, and they're like, how do you put that together so fast? And I'm like, why can't you? And it's because I forget. Oh yeah, you gotta unlearn the structure that you were taught. I didn't learn that structure. My mind was free to piece together what it wanted to and make connections where it's felt there were connections, and if not, then it was like my mind would go, okay, we don't need this piece. We can take that piece. And I started studying the main religions and picking and learning I can take the parts out of them that serve me and I feel like can serve humanity, and the rest of it, I'm like, just brush it aside. And I'm like, this is what I'm my core.
Right. I think any religion that teaches the better good is a good thing.
I totally agree.
Because if it's not serving anyone good or helping anybody, then what's the point? I think we see
Well, their
so.
point is to pad their pockets,
Yes,
in
that's what
my
I was about to
opinion.
say. We've
But
seen so many of them get rich, but they're not really helping anybody. I don't know if you've ever driven down I-75, and there's this big church on I-75, and they have this huge statue of Jesus, and it used to be called Touchdown Jesus. And I mean, this church made so much money. Well, their giant Jesus got hit by lightning really bad.
now that
And
would have been a sight to see.
oh, yes. And then they built another one with his arms out to the side. And now everybody calls it Footlong Jesus, which I don't mean to offend anyone religious, obviously, but I always wanted to put, The duckies you can put in water.
Right.
They have little devil ducks. I always wanted to put them in the pond because I'm 5.
Oh, not 5. You're just unspirited.
Like we every time me and my best friends drive by, we're like, we should order all these ducks and just release them.
That would be hilarious.
I know, and it's so bad. It's not very nice, but man, would I love to
Actually,
do that.
yeah, and like you said, not meaning any disrespect to religion or anything, but I would get the angel duckling and the devil duckling and glue it to the shoulders.
I don't think it's too big. Like we can't climb up on that thing. It's too big.
Use a drone.
Use a drone. Oh, I'm not that talented, Michael. I'm not. I would crash a drone. It would be, I'd be on the news. Woman with drone that can't drive one. So growing up, did you also witness spirits? Were you one of those children that could see them?
So the interesting thing was I always seen, like, out of the corner of my eyes growing up, these black figures.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say black, I mean they looked like pure black. There was no facial features, but they had human-esque form and no hair. And so I just thought, okay, they're out of the corner of my eye. They're just watching, or little tricksters trying to play a prank. And since I seen them, they disappear. So growing up with them, I just, was like, oh, they're just playful little friendly things. And like I said, fast forward to the future when I started paranormal investigating and realizing they're classified as shadow beings. I'm like, whoa,
Right.
wait a minute.
Yeah. Shadow people.
Yeah, I was like, why were shadow people around me as a kid? And so it raises more questions.
There's a couple theories on them. And I find them really interesting because some people believe that they were never human. Some people believe they could be evil, and some people believe tricksters. So I guess there's a couple of theories on those guys. What do you think they were?
To me, I feel like they were either the trickster, or I think it was, honestly, I would have to say now, knowing what I know now, I would almost venture to say they could have been like an alien race.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
is a theory. I have interviewed a couple people that have said that, actually. Which that's really interesting if you think about it. What a way to like study us if you're just a shadow figure and we can't see what you are.
that's true. And so a lot of people that watch my stuff know that I reference to get a point across TV shows or movies.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're talking about that, watching and learning, I can't help but think of the Star Trek movie where they were watching these people develop, interacting with them, but in cloaked suits until they damaged Data, and then he exposed the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a foreign concept, really. It's out there in mainstream. It's just a lot of people, I think, are too afraid to think of that, thinking, I don't want to think about there being invisible forces out there watching me.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. I mean, that does spook a lot of people to the point they don't even want to discuss it. Kind of like when people find out what we do, they kind of are afraid of it sometimes.
I agree, and I feel like if they ever sat down, and what I try to do is talk to them and say have you had this experience or that experience? And like, yeah, I'm like, that's a paranormal experience. It's
Absolutely.
a scary thing. Sometimes it is, but majority of the time, no.
And if people watch Star Trek, like, I don't know, I'm a big Trekkie. I love Star Trek. They predict
Like
a lot of stuff on that show before we even had it, iPads.
the iPads, the communication
Yeah.
devices,
Yep.
and I know this may fall under conspiracy, but there was an article put out that we had achieved warp speed, but then it disappeared and nobody has talked about it since. So
That stuff always
that's why,
disappears.
yeah, that's why I say it may fall under conspiracies because a lot of people may say, no, we don't. I was like, yeah, it was published. We had found how to achieve warp speed, and then it disappeared from media.
Which, you see that every so often. Something comes up, you get all excited about it, and you try to find it, and it's gone.
Yep, I have a lot of theories about that.
They want us to know, but they don't want us to know, maybe.
I think, well, that, and I think for under universal and natural law, nothing can operate without being known. And so when they say, like, we always look in movies and TV shows where the villains are spilling their plot right before they're taken down.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually defined as universal and natural law, to where in order to get around the free will law, they have to tell us what they're doing. And if we don't say no, then our silence is under their standard saying we're saying okay, yes to it. And so when they put it out there and nobody says no, that's not right, we're not doing that, that's how a lot of stuff gets put into laws, is
Mm-hmm.
because we don't say no.
Oh, absolutely. Now, when I had read your bio earlier, you also had near death experiences, haven't you? Did I read that
I have
right?
had three that I know of, and they're not your typical near death experience because I wasn't in a hospital, so there's no way I can actually declare myself dead. But there is missing time, and there were changes to my uh, trying to think of the word to use, my thought processes and understanding.
That's interesting. Did you ever consider maybe because you've lost time that you were an experiencer?
It, it could be. I just know on one experience, without getting too graphic for the radio audience, I was in my living room, and to set the stage is I am very warm natured.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like I'm a walking oven most of the time, and I generate a lot of heat, so I don't get cold. So when I feel cold, something's wrong
Mm-hmm.
with my body, and so I need to shut down and rest and then fix it, move on, and life goes on. But so in this instance, I was in my living room, and all of a sudden, my bones started feeling like ice was growing on them. And I was so cold, I was fully dressed and ended up putting two blankets on me, still feeling cold. So I thought, okay, I'm walking to my room and I'm going to go lay down and hopefully feel better in the morning. So I let my mom know I wasn't feeling so well, that I was going to lay down via phone, I believe. And so I'm walking in my room, and in the center of my room, under my window, is a four-post, full wood, I mean heavy wood, bed frame.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting close to the corner post, And next thing I know, I wake up on the ground, my chin hurts, and I go, what is going on? And I'm like, okay, I need to get in the bathroom. Fortunately, it was right next to where I was. So took a couple steps, got in there. And you know how you see in like the movies when they show tissue regenerates, it expels the old tissue?
Yes.
I experienced that. And it took me quite a while to clean that up.
Oh, wow.
But all of a sudden, the chills were gone and I was feeling totally like myself. And I look in the mirror and there's a mark on my chin. And so I'm like, I hit my chin on the bedpost when I apparently collapsed.
Hmm.
I have no memory of fainting. I just, like I said, I was standing, then I was on the floor, and then that happened. So that's why I called it a near death experience because I felt like I must have been out and died if tissue is doing that, was my mental thought.
Wow, that's quite a different experience. I don't think I've really heard of that before.
I haven't really either. And so that's when I learned there's different types of near death experiences.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Absolutely. I'm sure there is. Now, I know also you've traveled quite a bit.
I have.
And now I know you've had experiences when you were abroad. Can you share with my audience some of the awesome experiences that you had in your travels?
Sure. So one experience I had was I was in Egypt with my friend William Henry and his wife, and we were on tour and we were visiting all the temples from the root chakra up to the crown chakra. And I can tell you, being in Egypt, walking in the sand at these temples,
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you've been teleported through time because you physically feel and can sense I am walking where the pharaohs have walked, where their gods have walked, where the people have walked, and it hasn't changed. It looks the same, except, they're a little bit more in ruins now, but it's like everything, the energy is all like as if you'd almost feel like you were back in time.
Mm-hmm.
So on my birthday, we end up going into the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, and I mean, as birthday gifts go, you would think that would be the pinnacle right there, You couldn't get better than that.
Right.
Well, we're climbing up these steep steps, and at points we had to be on our hands and knees to make it up these pathways. And then we get to this tight little opening, and we had to put our arms through first and then kind of pull ourselves through into the king's chamber. Well, in there is this huge black obsidian solid sarcophagus holder without the lid. And my first thought is, how did they get that in here through that opening?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started realizing the pyramid had to have had that placed and been built down, not up like we would assume, because there was no way to get that up there.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to have placed it and then removed all the sand, placed the stones along the way and down, in my mind, to make that object possible to be in that room.
Interesting.
But so the reason I point out the black obsidian is because we all got turns laying in it.
Oh.
And so we took the pose of like the pharaoh when he died, or the empress, or priestess. I believe they were the same way. And we had our arms crossed over our chest. And William took a tuning fork to the bottom left hand side. So by the left foot, tapped the obsidian, and you could hear the tone echoing through. And then I hear on the right upper shoulder area, the right corner, where he taps diagonal, and hear the sound again. And next thing I know, I'm not in the pyramid anymore. It's like a door opened and I was sucked through the door. So I feel like a gate opened. So I went through the gate, and I'm standing in this area that has this foggy sense to it. And so I hear voices, and I'm walking towards the voices, trying to figure out what's going on, and walk and find where the voices are the gods of Egypt talking amongst themselves. And I go, "You guys are the gods." And they kind of look at me, and I go, "You do see what's going on in the world right now, right? Why aren't you doing anything?" Next thing I know, I'm back in the sarcophagus container, black obsidian, and they're lifting me up,
Mhm.
I came to, and then they lifted me up, and then everybody went through, and everyone had different experiences.
Oh, that's cool.
So the interesting part is we then left the king's chamber, went to the queen's chamber. To this day, I have no memory of what the queen's chamber looks like. Anything about it, stepping foot in there. I
Wow.
have a friend, Kathy, who was on the tour with me, and she's like, "Oh, you were in there. I don't, know how much, you did in there, but, we all went in there."
Mhm.
And I was like, "It's a blank." And it's like, what? I, I sit there and I'm like, am I so processing what happened in the king's chamber that my mind never took in where I was with the queen's chamber, or energy wise, was I not supposed to be in the queen's chamber, or did something else happen and they're blocking the memory? So I'll have to figure out if they're blocking it, why they're blocking it, and if I'll ever get that memory back.
Hmm. Hypnosis? Have you ever thought about that?
I went through hypnosis as a teenager, and ironically, now it's like you would think I would be like, yeah, hypnosis works great, but it's never pops in my head as a way of getting these memories. And a lot of people say, yeah, you can do hypnosis or go through meditation. And so I've
Yeah.
started meditating more.
Has it helped you any? Has it helped you gain any memories back?
I've been trying to meditate on some other aspects of my life that have been blocked, and they're slow to come through. And I understand why they're slow, because it's a lot of information to process.
Mhm.
And so I'm learning what I like to call the divine patience, which is a level above patience.
I think I need some of that.
But yeah, and so that was my Egypt. And in France, I was in the Cathar region. And
Mhm.
if, for your audience who doesn't understand what Cathar means, that means it's where the Knights Templar and those orders were. It was their castles and it was their region. And I'm walking around Rennes-le-Chateau, which, if you've seen any of my shows, I just love repeating the word Rennes-le-Chateau. It's just so much fun.
I know you do. It sounds
But
cool. That's why. It's a very
it
cool word.
rolls off.
Yeah.
But I was walking around it towards midnight, which you're really not supposed to, but you're exploring. You're in a foreign country, and it's a famous landmark. It's like, sometimes you just get called to do it. So the first night, we're going up the hill because we were sleeping at the base of the town. And as we're going up, I can hear rustling in the small, I'm talking small, like maybe a foot or two wide areas of trees of the pathway going up because they're more designed for roads. It's like a one-way road, really. And so we're going up, and I hear this rustling. And all of a sudden, it's like I start feeling this sick knotting in my stomach, and I'm like, we got to stop. I tell my roommate, we got to stop. He's like, we're almost there. I can see the gate from here. I'm like, no, we got to turn back. Something's not right. And so we go back because he trusts me, and he's like, if I have a bad feeling, something isn't right, it's, he respects that, and he's like, all right, we'll go back.
Right.
So in a day or two, I don't remember if it was the next night or maybe 2 nights later, we try again. And we're going up, and I don't hear the rustling. And so I start thinking to myself, well, the rustling was probably Guardian's City, and we did not have permission to be there. And they were testing us to see if we would respect their ways. And because we turned back, they must be like, we're okay.
Right.
We're going to honor and respect their, the sacredness of the land. And so something, like you get like what I like to call the spidey sense, where your hair stand up on your neck and
yeah.
something's up. Well, we turn and look, and from a mountain behind where we were staying, we see this form of light coming our way, like torches, but it's going right down the hill as if the trees don't matter. And the closest thing I could describe it to was, if you've ever seen the 13th Warrior.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The fire worm that they talk about.
Yes.
That's what it looked like coming our way. And I was like, dude, if we're doing this, we got to hurry, because I don't think we're supposed to meet up with that thing. And so we stop halfway up, and we're sitting on a bench. We check out some ruins, and the fire worm is still coming. And so we're like, all right, if we're going to do this, we got to do it. We get up, we pose at the famous stone at the entry of the city that says Rennes-le-Chateau, and take photos at night. And we're walking through the town being very quiet, trying to respect people are asleep. And we standing next to the Tour Magdala, and we're looking out, and behind all of the sacred mountains are these bright lights. And we're like trying to figure out, is that, city lights, but that's just way too bright. And I don't know if I had said it to him or not, but I started thinking those are bases and not military or earthly bases. I feel like those were ET bases. And now, especially now, I think that. And we go and we start to walk around the Tour Magdala, and he hears this noise, and I don't hear it. So he goes, I'll go check it out. I was like, go ahead. I'll walk on. So I'm walking, and as he disappears out of sight, I look up and I see this lady in white float across the walkway into the tour.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, I think she looked at me. So, well, it's interesting that I saw her and then she just disappeared. And I'm like, okay. And as I'm trying to figure and process all of this out, this voice comes from behind me and says, "Oh, it was nothing." And so I'm like, okay. And so I'm snapping out of it. We take like 4 or 5 steps forward, and we both look dead forward, and there's these two red lights, spaced like eyes, I width apart, looking at us through this bush. And we're like, "You see that, right?" And we're both like, "Yes, we both seen this." And I'm like, "There's a cut through here. Let's cut through here." And we end up right at the entrance to the city. And I'm like, "Let's go down." I'm like, "Don't want to mess with whatever that is," because it wasn't making sound. I didn't, and I was like, it was watching us. So I was like, "I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Not a car. It's something else." And so I'm like, I don't want to mess with it. So we're walking down, and the fireworm is gone.
Hmm.
We get back and we go to sleep, and I'm like, the next day we go to Puvert. On this sign, before you enter the Castle Puvert, is a legend that says, "If you see a lady in white, you're marked for death."
Oh, that's
I
never good.
I kept quiet from my friend who was leading this uh, tour of France, and never told anybody that I had seen the lady in white, because in my mind I was like, I didn't want any heroics. If if I'm marked, I'm going out alone. I'm not taking anyone with me.
Right?
I did not speak about it because I was like, maybe that's what happens is if you talk about her, then you activate the mark. And so it was like a year or two ago, I finally told my friend that was leading the tour of France that, yeah, I saw a lady in white. And she's like, "Oh my God, you've been keeping that a secret all this time?" I said, "Yes, I have." Like, "You should have told me." I was like, "I wasn't one to put anybody else at risk."
Oh, did you tell her you just didn't want to put that energy into it?
No, actually, I told her, I said, my honest feeling was I didn't want anyone to put themselves at risk, you know, trying to save me, because I was like, I knew them. They would all try something, and I didn't want it to backlash or create a mark on them. And so I was like, no, if
Right.
this is what's to be, I accept it, and I'm going to take it myself. And if I was, maybe that's what undid it, is that I accepted it and didn't fight it, and was just surrendered to it and just said, when it happens, it happens.
So, Michael, you've been on over 100 investigations. Is there one investigation that has stuck with you?
There is one, and it was a 2 day. For me, it was a 2 night investigation because I was with two different teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at Fort Walters military base in Mineral Wells, where they trained the helicopter pilots for Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in one of the buildings. It was the PX building. And we're getting EVPs, like a voice says, "Pause it" during a cadence. And we're getting the camp balls to light up during, playing cadences and taps. And yes, I know how funny it sounds, but as paranormal investigators, we do use cat balls. They are a great tool. I've totally come to respect them.
They're the ones that light up, correct?
They are.
Yeah.
it has to move, and then it turns into these rainbow lights.
Yeah.
It is so much fun to watch.
Yes, they are.
But I've had so many experiences with those. And the next night, I was with a different team, and we get this voice, like this giggle. And I had never heard it out of these probably 6 to 9 months that I had been there. Never heard this sound. And they're all asking me, this couple is asking me about it, and they're like, it's on a pattern. I mean, it plays every like 12 to 15 minutes. And I'm like, you're kidding, right? And I was like, no. And I'm like, so what did you do? Because I'm sitting there thinking, this can't be real phenomena because I would have heard this, long before this point.
Right.
Sure enough, we spent 2 hours trying to figure out where this sound was coming from and never could figure out where exactly it was coming from. We would stand in circle, stand in a straight line, stand in four corners of the room. Everybody would hear it from different places.
Huh.
It was like driving us nuts. And we finally
I bet.
we got to call it, and I went back a week later on a Friday night with a lady that it was her team. So she came with me, a friend of mine, and the lady that runs security for the building during the haunted season, because it's also a haunted house. We're walking around and we're like, yeah, we never hear the same thing twice. So, let's just spend like 5 minutes in there and we'll, say we investigated, didn't get it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
We got it.
Oh,
We
that's
actually
cool.
did repeat, and it was like the lady that was running the security was like, I can't believe this. So we find out it's from a doll, but the doll has no batteries in it. The batteries have been moved long ago. And it was like a month later, the lady that runs the haunted house there at the time, her name is Shauna Lee Anderson, reaches out to me and says, hey, you know that giggle sound that you guys were hunting? Yeah. It's in a different room now. And so my mind was just like, never identify the source, could never figure out why it was coming. And now it's in another room.
Ugh. Dolls scare me.
Me too.
I'm not a doll fan.
Dolls alone will creep me out at night, in the dark. But when you add the word haunted in front of them, that puts a whole nother level.
I know. It's a whole level of, oh, hell no.
Yep.
They are not my thing. That's for sure, man. Oh my goodness.
I have no qualms about embarrassing myself and saying, when I'm walking through a location and there's a doll room, even if it's haunted or not, when I step foot in there and I don't know about it, I kid you not, on every audio recording, you will hear me go, oh, hell no.
Not at all. Not at all.
I'm like, why are these here? What the hell?
So have you ever been frightened, literally frightened on an investigation?
Ironically, no.
I hear that a lot, actually.
I have had occurrences where people you would think would be freaking out, but I honestly have not yet reached that point. And I'm still investigating here and there, new locations coming up. And so I'm confident in my abilities, but I also am very well aware that I'm sure my day is coming to approach something that will make me run. But until then, I stand my ground and believe in the protection that I have around me. And so that's why I say I have yet to experience that, but I feel confident my day is coming. I'm not going to be that one investigator that says, "Oh, I'll never ever run." I'm like, because I don't know. We never know what we're going to encounter.
Yeah. So, has any of your investigations made you, oh gosh, how would I put this? Have any of your investigations made you want to go back to one place over and over again that you felt a real connection with?
So, Old Park Hotel in Ballinger, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Been there 7 times, I believe now,
Wow.
6 or 7. And the humorous nature around how I keep that count is there are 10 rooms that you can spend the night in. And so I every time I spend the night, I sleep in a different room. So I count, I know how many times I've investigated there by how many rooms are left that I haven't slept in.
So, what attracts you to that place? Is it the beauty or the past?
I think it's the history that's there, and the owners are really great. Connie and Dan LaFave, they're paranormal investigators
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and so I learn a lot from them. And they will investigate with you, or they will let you have free reign,
Mm-hmm.
and they won't interfere. And it's just, I've always had something happen there. And now you can do the jail across the street if you pay to reserve that part of it. And so, there's now that attraction too. And so that's one location I've been to many times. The Yorktown Memorial Hospital, which was my very first investigation, I've been to 5 times.
Wow.
I've been to Fort Walters, the military base. I've investigated there probably close to 10, 15 times.
Wow.
I like to go back because, like I mentioned, with that one experience there where we actually were able to duplicate and the sound, I always like to go back and try to connect with or interact with something that's happened prior, or be open to what's coming next.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think is next for you in the investigation part of what you do? What's your dream spot?
My dream spot would be to investigate locations that most people normally wouldn't be able to investigate. Like there are some Civil War POW camps nearby. There's World War II POW camps nearby. There's landmarks, in Texas like the Alamo. I would love
Yeah.
to be able to investigate there, but they don't allow it. And so, would my hope is building on my reputation with the shows that I put in and being respectful and open and authentic, that at some point I would like to be able to walk up and say, "Hi, I'm so and so, and here's the shows I do. Can I do this here?" and it'll be just me or me and one other person, and be, respectful, and so, and garner their trust and be like, okay, you will allow it.
I always thought it'd be super cool to investigate the Smithsonian Museum. I heard
Uh, yeah.
I heard that was very haunted.
Well, there could be two reasons why that building's haunted.
Well, yeah.
Is the artifacts that are there and the artifacts that they're hiding there.
Oh, and they have a lot hidden.
They do.
A lot we don't know about. So that's really interesting, I think.
Yeah, because I've read so many stories of where, like, we had bones of giants found in Nevada,
Oh, yeah.
and the Smithsonian shows up and the bones disappear. You know they have them.
Oh, they have a lot. They have a lot of things. Yeah.
So I have a feeling that when I say hidden objects there, those are what I'm talking about. It's the stuff that they have taken from sites and made disappear. I feel like the energy of those objects are waking up and saying, hey, we're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be hiding us. And
We're here. We're here.
we're going to let people know we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a lot of interesting stuff at that museum that people don't know about. I'd love to be the spider, the crawling around at night watching all of it.
I know, and I feel a little bit bad for, like the people who work there that are trying to do good and keep the history alive and everything,
Sure.
because those are, the good people. But I hear so many times when I'll say, oh, I think I found something, that could be of historical value. The first thing out of everyone's mouth is, don't call the Smithsonian, because you'll never see it again.
It's true. You won't. Doesn't the government fund?
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's why I say I feel bad for the people who work there that are trying genuinely to help mankind and saying, hey, here's the history of where we've come from and here's where we can go. And they're working with an element that is also sweeping our true past and history under the rug. And so it's like, yeah, I feel bad for them, but at the same time, I'm like, that we gotta put an end to it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everybody raid the Smithsonian. Don't leave the building alone. But
if they call me, I'm sending them to you, Michael.
I'm like, yeah, I never advocate destroying anything or damaging anything. Leave it as it is. Just document it and just make a video or something about it.
Yeah, that's right. Michael, what's next for you?
So, what's next for me is about 2 years ago in July, I started podcasting. So I'm enjoying that. And I have, for probably close to 5 to 10 years, had a lot of people saying I should write a book. And it started up again. And so I may end up actually biting down and writing a book. I actually went into my file for my book that I created as a start, thinking that would inspire me. And I have a blank Word document that says my book by my name, and that's it. Don't even have a title.
It will come to you.
I was like, don't know what to write or anything. And then I just sat down, and one day recently I was like, well, what topics could I write about? So I started making a list of topics. So who knows? I might actually start to piece together some of these topics into chapters and make a book out of it.
That's right. That's how it starts, you know.
But the funny thing was, is I was talking with a couple who just did book releases, and one of my guests on my podcast had just released a book, and she said, "Yes, I did a table of contents, and the book was born from that." And I was thinking, okay, so if I break it out, maybe then the book will come. And then I was talking with another person who said, "Yeah, you know, I wrote the book, but then I had to figure out the cover and the back cover and what was going to be used." And I was like, oh my God, this is becoming a nightmare again.
One day at a time, Michael, one day at a time, one step at a time.
It just, yeah, when you start thinking of all the pieces, you're like, this is so daunting. But yeah, I'm finding you got to take it one step at a time, one chapter at a time. Just fill that out.
Absolutely.
And build from there.
Michael, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Yes, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
And let's keep in contact with each other, and I'll have you back on sometime soon.
Definitely. And if you're up to video, you could always be a guest on my show as well.
Sure, just let me know. And you have a great night.